Many people say that introverts can't be as successful as extroverts because people who have introverted traits are identical to being shy, awkward, rarely talk, and prefer to be alone. But in fact, all of that is just a myth. Actually, being an introvert doesn't mean they withdraw from social life. They just have different characteristics from most people. In this video, Booklist summarizes a book written by Sylvia Loehken, entitled Quiet Impact: How to Be a Successful Introvert. Quiet Impact provides an overview of the main differences between an introvert and an extrovert, various the strengths and obstacles possessed by introverts, as well as strategies that can be done to strengthen their position, especially in the work environment, and prove that an introvert can also appear in front. Before that, if you are interested, please subscribe and also turn on the notification bell, and most importantly, watch this video until it's finished, so you can get all the insights from the summary of the book that I discussed this time. Achieving Success by Awakening Introverted Personal Potential. Introverts or quiet are often underestimated because they are often seen as inactive, especially in the work environment. In fact, there is nothing wrong with being an introvert. It's just that an introvert does require more effort so that he is seen, and is no less accomplished than an extrovert. In this book, you can find out whether you tend to be introverted or extroverted. You will also learn about the potential that this quiet person has, and the obstacles that are often experienced, as well as approaches that can be taken to harness this potential to achieve success. Interesting things you will learn include: what is the difference between introvert personality and shy and antisocial attitude? Why introverts can be more persistent at work than extroverts? What are introverted strategies to show their achievements? And, is it true that Obama is an introvert figure? The difference between introverts and extroverts is in the ability to absorb energy from social interactions. A person's personality can be divided into two types, namely introvert and extrovert. Basically, these two characters are present in everyone, although everyone has their own tendencies. However, it is not uncommon for many people to feel that they have both personalities in more or less equal proportions. The difference between introverts and extroverts at work lies in the source of energy they get. An extrovert gets an external source of energy and needs to be actively involved in the process. Conversely, an introvert builds energy from within. External activities actually become processes that make them have to release the energy that has been built up. Introverts are often considered antisocial and not interested in interacting with other people. As explained in the previous paragraph, a quiet person feels burdened by social interactions in terms of energy availability. However, this does not mean they are antisocial. Introverts only need time to rebuild energy on the sidelines of their social interactions. This is what distinguishes introverts from being antisocial and shy, as there is often misunderstanding between the terms. Shyness is solely related to anxiety about social contact, and this feeling of anxiety can strike anyone. Meanwhile, antisocial is more to do with the desire to be reluctant to be actively involved socially. Besides introverts who are quiet, there are also introverts who like to hang out. They are sociable people and are experts at initiating contact with others. It's just that, between interactions, they need some time alone before dealing with other people again. Human character is regulated by the physiology of the brain, including the emergence of introverted and extroverted behavior in a person. Other conditions that also influence the formation of character are the situation or moment that is currently happening, the culture around it, and the time. A person's introverted and extroverted portions tend to become more in balance with age. You need to identify how introverted or extroverted you are. Is it balanced or leaning towards one? Once you've discovered these character proportions, you can figure out your potential and common barriers to dealing with yourself and others. Find out who you are and do it on purpose. Dolly Parton. An introvert has its own advantages and disadvantages compared to an extrovert. Introverts, even though they are considered to be inactive and communicating, actually have some potential beyond extroverts. The ability to be calm and full of concentration is one of its main advantages. It also makes introverts more persistent because they can pursue something patiently for a long time. Analytical and systematic thinking skills are the advantages of introverts, which are then divided into two types. Right brain users, where they tend to process information subjectively and intuitively, or instinct, and left brain users, who tend to be object and theory-oriented. According to Olson-Laney, an introvert researcher, left brain users are the group that best describes the introvert stereotype. In addition, introverts are very capable of living independently, and they have a good ability to empathize. Therefore, they are also known as good listeners. In addition to the advantages mentioned above, introverts have several disadvantages. The feeling of fear is the most frequent and strongest weakness that becomes an obstacle for introverts. This then raises doubts in themselves to interact with other people. Excessive attention to detail often limits introverts from seeing the big picture of a project. This attitude often makes introverts seem inflexible in a work environment. Another weakness of introverts is being passive. Passive attitude is when someone is reluctant to take the initiative and tends to wait. Another weakness is trying to avoid conflict, even tends to give in. For introverts, dealing with conflict is very draining. This causes introverts to appear to want to avoid unpleasant situations. The depletion of energy through social interaction can form an introvert's negative perception of the world around him. They come to regard most things as negative things. The reliability of thinking of introverts who are known to be good also sometimes actually makes them fixate on logic and ignore their own feelings or emotions. Justified fear is protective. Unreasonable fear is a hindrance. Sylvia Loehken. Introverts need to make adjustments to the personal environment and work environment. The key to building a successful relationship is recognizing your own needs as well as your partner's needs, regardless of whether they are fellow introverts or extroverts. Therefore, efforts to recognize each other's needs are needed. In a diverse home setting, consisting of both introverted and extroverted people, the right approach is to consider each family member's needs equally. For example, attending weekend parties with neighbors is as good as reading a book alone in your room. At home, there are times when introverts want to be alone, and this is normal. Steps that can be taken are as follows. Find a comfortable space to be alone. Ask people at home to speak at a low volume so as not to increase emotions, and provide food for the mind, such as reading an interesting book or blog, and exercise. In a work environment, introverts like to work alone, which then gives the impression that they don't stand out in a team. This is, of course, not true. So, how to show the achievements of an introvert at work? First, identification of needs. Generally, the need for introverts is to work alone without distraction. They can work around this by coming to work early or continuing to work after other co-workers leave to take advantage of the quiet workplace atmosphere. You can also make agreements with co-workers not to interrupt at certain times. Second, set how to interact with colleagues. Extrovert co-workers like to have discussions, while introverts need quiet time to work. Here are some moments you can work around when an introvert often runs out of discussion. Set a time to meet people at lunch. Leave non-required modules in a seminar. And figure out important and unimportant informal rules, such as eat after work. it is important for introverts to be a solution to problems in their work environment. Introverts have a need to talk less but do more. In this case, they can speed up the work of colleagues by summarizing the main ideas in the conversation and using their analytical thinking skills to classify which ones are important and which are not important. In addition to the tips above, you also need to pay attention to the following 5 principles for career promotion of an introvert. First, make sure that your boss always knows what you are doing. Second, establish contact with colleagues and superiors. Third, honestly mentioning things of interest, so colleagues and superiors know. Fourth, taking the initiative to take responsibility outside the main task. And fifth, delegating responsibilities that are felt to be no longer challenging. Building a professional network and public speaking are important and can be mastered by introverts. In the world of work, building a professional network is important. In general, this can not only be carried out in official events, but outside of the allotted time, such as during lunch and dinner, relaxing at the cafe. Unfortunately, the above activities often drain introverts' energy, so they tend to avoid them. Here are some methods that introverts can do to build a network. First, making targets so they know which groups to go to get acquainted. Second, determining the allocation of available resources, such as time and money. Third, introducing known colleagues to others and asking him to introduce them to his colleagues. And fourth, maintain the professional network that has been built until at least a real profit has been made. For introverts, social media is just as important as other media when it comes to maintaining a professional network. Therefore, social media must be managed regularly. Apart from building a professional network, another reluctance for quiet people is speaking in public. It should be noted that Barack Obama, who is known as an introvert, can succeed in becoming a good orator after years of practicing speech. Yes, routine experience will make self-confidence increase. Success in appearing in public can be judged when a person succeeds in carrying himself according to his personality, whether humorous, calm, motivating, or all other traits. In addition, it is said to be successful if the message to be conveyed can be captured and the listener is able to really follow what is being said. The ability to concentrate is the strength of a quiet person in making a speech. This allows them to focus on many things, such as how to display gestures and pay attention to intonation and pauses without rushing. But there are also obstacles that introverts usually face, namely, the fear of conveying a lot of details that make listeners feel bored and reluctant to continue the speech. Being proactive in meeting and persistent in negotiating is required as a way to achieve your goals. There's no doubt that meetings are a scary situation for quiet people because they feel under too much pressure during a meeting. Can this be overcome? Yes, as long as introverts are aware that there are some unwritten rules in meetings. Unofficial rules in meetings that need to be observed, namely, first, attendance is judged by whether or not someone speaks at the meeting. Second, the concentration of meeting participants tends to be low, so that the delivery is carried out briefly. Third, people with higher positions get longer talking time. Fourth, the rules in conducting meetings are not always obeyed by the participants, for example, interrupting when other people are talking. Fifth, if there is a decision that is considered difficult, then generally the discussion has started informally before the meeting. And sixth, the decision is not always the same as the implementation. Regarding the last point, an introvert can play an important role in ensuring all decisions are written down in meeting notes and include who does what. Negotiation is needed when the parties involved must reach a mutual agreement, especially if each has different interests. However, the negotiating parties generally only agree on a favorable outcome of the negotiations. The ability to listen, think analytically, and be persistent to direct the conversation, as well as empathy, are the hallmarks of introverts in negotiating. On the other hand, Introverts' obstacles in negotiating are relying too much on their brains, being fixated on their own position, making it difficult to be flexible, and tend to want to avoid conflict. An example of an approach that can be tried in negotiating is to clearly identify what you want to achieve and the negotiating process that will be faced. Don't forget to understand the purpose of the other person so you can prepare arguments to get results that benefit each other, or at least put both parties in the same position. Book conclusion. The difference between introverts and extroverts can be seen from the way they absorb or expend energy in social interactions. The advantages of being an introvert include being able to be calm, concentrate, persistent, have analytical thinking skills, live independently, and empathize. Weaknesses of introverts include being afraid and passive, paying too much attention to details, avoiding conflict, and ignoring one's own feelings. Introverts need to identify their needs at work, such as minimizing distractions, time effectiveness, and talking less but working a lot. Building a professional network, whether through digital or non-digital, is important. Silent figures' participation in meetings can be increased by believing that there are unwritten rules to be considered. Advantages of introverted people can be developed to achieve successful negotiations.